I asked Dr. Dan Wallace to tell us why our English translations sometimes differ. As you're going to hear, there are two basic reasons. The first difference arises because of the Greek text upon which each English translation is based. But remember, the differences in Greek copies, whether early or late, is minuscule. Because of the thousands of copies of the New Testament that have come down to us, we know we have 100% of the biblical text. And scholars already agree on 98% of that. Whichever Greek manuscript you choose to start from, the words are almost identical to the others. But then second, translations will sometimes differ because of the philosophy of translation that was used. For example, did the translators choose to translate word for word as literally as possible? Or have they chosen to use a combination of literal and dynamic translation in trying to get across the meaning in our own language today? Well, Dr. Dan Wallace describes the process each of the modern translations chose to use. Listen.
In terms of the textual basis, the difference between New American Standard and NIV is minuscule. They have a difference in translation philosophy, not in terms of textual basis. In terms of the translation philosophy between the New King James and the New American Standard, it's not that great of a difference. Their difference is in terms of the text. So you've got these two issues at play here. What is the text and what is the translation philosophy? Dynamic equivalence, I think Ken stated it quite well when he said dynamic equivalence is trying to start with the intention of the human author and get to the intention for the reader. So he understands exactly what that biblical author meant in the first place, whether it has the same words or not. Formal equivalence is if you got 17 words in Greek, you're going to have 17 words in English. And if you, actually the worst translation on the market is a strictly formal equivalent translation. It happens to be the New World Translation, where they're formally equivalent all across the board, except when it comes to their pet doctrines, like non-deity of Christ. And they say, gee, we're going to go to dynamic equivalence.
New World Translation is the Jehovah's Witness translation.
Right. So it's got the worst of both worlds, in other words.
Would you guys agree with that kind of assessment?
Well, the formal thing is not that close.
No, I realize
King James has a lot of rearranging of words to make it beautiful English. It would never have lasted.
That's not where it's formal.
Well, but it's considered. You take the Luther Bible and the King James and so forth, they're basically formal. That's called formal. I'm not sure that's a great term. And the NASB and the New King James are in that camp.
All translations have to get away from formal equivalency.
But to say 17 words, that's going much further.
No, what I'm saying is if you take it in its purest form, if some translation could be totally formally equivalent, it would do that very kind of thing. Yeah. We who know 2 or 3 or 10 languages know that that's an impossibility. Even the King James, when it reads in Matthew 1, Mary was having it in the belly, is what it says in Greek. They're not going to translate it that way. Mary was with child. And the NIV does something a little different in the American Standard.
Let me give you another example of dynamic equivalence in the King James. All translations use dynamic equivalence.
That's right.
That there is no question about that. They all use
Even
it. For example, Isaiah 40. The King James says, "Comfort ye my people." Well, the literal there in the Hebrew says, "Speak to the heart of my people." Not even the King James translators thought that that would adequately communicate meaning, to say, "Speak to the heart of my people." So they said, "Comfort ye my people." That's a dynamic equivalence. So where the difference is in the matter of degrees.
And consistency.
Yeah, degrees and consistency. And that's why I pointed out 3 types of translations. Those that are perhaps most consistent on the formal equivalent side, those that are most consistent on the dynamic equivalent side, such as the Good News Bible, and those that are the most consistent in trying to be a mediating balanced translation falling in the middle, such as the NIV.